Jack couldn't understand what was happening. Every afternoon, right after lunch, his eyes became heavy. His focus disappeared, and getting through the rest of the workday felt like a struggle. He always needed something to keep going, another coffee, another energy drink, anything to stay awake. At first, Jack blamed his stressful job, but later, he discovered something surprising. The thing draining his energy every afternoon was the very thing he believed was giving him energy in the first place. Every day looked exactly the same. Around lunchtime, Jack would eat his meal and head back to work. For the next 30 minutes, he felt perfectly fine. But then something changed. His energy began to fade. His focus disappeared. And tasks that normally felt easy suddenly felt difficult. At first, he blamed stress. But after noticing the same pattern day after day, Jack started tracking his eating habits. And, before long, he discovered a surprising pattern repeating itself every afternoon. The first problem was surprisingly simple: sugar. Many of Jack's lunches came with a soft drink, a sweet coffee, or some other sugary drink. At first, the sugar made him feel energized, but that feeling didn't last. His blood sugar rose quickly, then dropped just as fast, and when it crashed, his body responded with fatigue, low energy, and an overwhelming desire to rest. The second issue was hidden inside the food itself: white bread, noodles, pastries, large portions of white rice. These refined carbohydrates are digested very quickly. That means energy enters the bloodstream fast, but it doesn't stay there for long. Instead of providing steady fuel throughout the afternoon, they often create unstable energy levels. And before Jack knew it, the familiar feeling of sleepiness would return. But the biggest discovery came from something Jack had ignored for years: protein. Most of his lunches were built around carbohydrates: rice, bread, noodles, but very little protein. And that turned out to be a problem. Protein helps you feel full for longer. It supports more stable energy levels, and it helps the brain stay focused. So Jack made a simple change. He started adding more protein to his lunch. Nothing extreme, just a little more than before. Within a few weeks, he noticed something surprising. The afternoon sleepiness became less intense. His concentration improved, and for the first time in a long while, his energy felt steady instead of unpredictable. For a while, Jack thought he was simply getting older. Maybe he was naturally becoming more tired. Maybe he was losing motivation. Or maybe he was just lazy. The harder he tried to fight the problem, the worse it seemed to get. More caffeine, more quick fixes, nothing worked. And the most frustrating part was that he had no idea why it was happening. There was one more factor Jack never considered: water. Most days, he drank far less than he thought he did. A coffee in the morning, a drink with lunch, and not much else. The problem is that even mild dehydration can affect how the brain functions. It can make you feel tired, slow, and less focused. So Jack started doing something simple. He kept a bottle of water nearby and drank consistently throughout the day. The change wasn't instant, but over time, his concentration improved, and those afternoon crashes became much less common. The final lesson was about quantity. Jack's lunches were often much larger than they needed to be, and after eating a huge meal, his body had to work harder to digest it. That left him feeling heavy, sluggish, and ready for a nap instead of work. Eventually, Jack started eating more reasonable portions, not smaller because he was dieting, smaller because he wanted better energy, and almost immediately, his afternoons became much easier to manage. That's when Jack finally understood what had been happening all along. He wasn't lacking energy. He was creating energy crashes every single day without realizing it. The problem wasn't his age, or his motivation, or his job. It was his daily habits. Because food doesn't just provide energy, it can also take energy away. And once Jack understood that simple truth, everything started to make sense. A few weeks later, Jack noticed a real difference. His afternoons no longer felt like a battle. He stayed alert for longer, needed less coffee to get through the day. His work became easier to focus on, and tasks that once felt exhausting started feeling manageable again. Most importantly, he felt healthier, not because he discovered a miracle solution, but because he stopped working against his body's natural energy system. Looking back, Jack realized that feeling tired after every meal wasn't normal. It wasn't something he simply had to accept. Small food choices were creating massive changes in his energy levels. And once he improved what he ate, how much he ate, and how he fueled his body, his afternoons changed completely. Now I'm curious, what food makes you feel sleepy the fastest? Let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoy simple health lessons that actually make a real difference in everyday life, subscribe and join us for the next episode.